Hi, my name is Leslie Vernick, and I have written a book called The Emotionally Destructive Marriage: How to Find Your Voice and Reclaim Your Hope. Today, I want to talk about the third mile marker in the journey of repairing and restoring a damaged relationship, and that is of building back stability and new history into the marital relationship. Now, if you haven't watched my previous two videos on what the mile markers are of safety and sanity, please go back and watch those first, because these two, safety and sanity, are absolutely crucial to get in place before you begin to work on building new history. If you're a pastor or counselor who's watching this video, you want to help a couple build loving and godly interactions. But this takes new awareness, repentance, perseverance, and sometimes a good amount of time in order to build that new history together. And so this third step, necessary to repair this destructive relationship, is started only after there's some success at maintaining safety and gaining sanity in the marriage relationship. If a couple's been separated, or if you've been separated physically from your spouse, you do not want to reconcile prematurely, because the last thing that you want to have happen is to see the old history repeating itself over and over again. And you can't build new history together or any marital stability when the old history, the bad stuff, keeps happening over and over again. In my first video on safety, I shared about a woman who emailed me, Shirley, and she had some concerns that her biblical counselor was pressuring her to reconcile with her husband Ray before she felt really ready. They had been separated due to physical abuse, and her counselor said that they couldn't really work on the marriage until he moved back home. But Shirley's fear was that she hadn't really seen enough evidence of Ray's changing or maintaining safety concerns while they were separated. Ray's current selfish behavior repeated their old marital history, such as Ray's needs always came first, or Ray always gets what Ray wants, and Ray felt entitled to badger, manipulate, and retaliate if Shirley didn't give him what he wanted. Shirley was never allowed to say no without a heavy price to pay, and that was their old history. Now, we know that Ray's never going to change perfectly, and change doesn't happen overnight. But even while a couple is separated, Ray could be changing. He could be learning how to think differently. He could be learning how to see Shirley's needs not as an obstacle to what he wants, but as an opportunity to learn how to love her. He could be working on building new history with Shirley even while separated. Let me give you some examples. If Ray was working on sanity and safety goals, then he must begin to start to see, which would be sanity, his self-centered orientation. And he also must begin to accept Shirley's feedback when she sees that he's repeating some old patterns. Let's see what this looks like when Ray is visiting the children. He's staying over and he's getting later and later in the evening, and Shirley's getting tired and she wants him to go home. So she says to Ray, "Ray, it's time to go home. The kids are tired. We all want to go to bed." Shirley is asking Ray to be considerate of her needs. But Ray responds, "This is my house too. I don't know why I can't stay and just finish watching this football game. Go to bed. I don't care." In this moment, Ray is only thinking about Ray. Shirley responds, "Ray, I'm not comfortable going to sleep with you still in the house. Please leave." Shirley's being honest and asking Ray for some respect. Ray says, "You're just being selfish. Don't you know how boring it is to stay in that room that I have to stay in because of you? All I'm asking is to finish watching this football game. It'll take me 30 minutes. Go to bed, stay up, I don't care, but I just want to watch this game." Ray is attacking. He's blame shifting. He's not practicing safety or sanity. Shirley comes back at him. She says, "Ray, you're not respecting my boundaries right now. You're not living in this house because of me. You're not living in this house because of your own abusive behaviors. And right now you're behaving as if your feelings come before anyone else's. I said I was tired. I want you to leave." Shirley is giving Ray feedback on his words and his behavior. This gives him an opportunity to press pause in this moment and reflect about what he's doing and to decide which kind of Ray he wants to be. Is he going to be the new Ray who's going to practice safety and sanity, or is he going to go back to old Ray who's demanding his ways all the time? Is he going to build new history by caring that Shirley is tired and respecting her boundary and going home? Now, even if he capitulates to Shirley's demand and he goes home, is he going to handle that disappointment and not being able to watch the rest of the football game in a godly way? Or is he going to go home by slamming the door and retaliating by calling her names and engaging in other abusive, manipulative behaviors? If he does it that way, the old history is just repeating itself. But if not, and he presses pause and he says, you're right. I'm wrong. I'm being selfish here. I'll go home. Then he's beginning to build that new history. And this type of interaction can become exhausting for a couple when it's repeated again and again and again with no change. Last week I talked with a couple who's been building new history together. Their old history was that he had been extremely critical, demanding, unappreciative of Wendy, who was a stay-at-home mom. And he now begins to see how destructive that's been, and he doesn't want to do that anymore. He's gaining sanity. But those old habits, they die hard. And so recently they celebrated a very small victory. John came home from work, tired and crabby. He was fighting a sore throat and cold. And dinner wasn't ready, and he started in on Wendy like usual. "What the have you been doing all day?" he snarled at her. And Wendy began to defend herself, but before she even got the words out of her mouth, John caught himself and he said, "Wendy, I'm sorry. You don't deserve that. I know you work hard. Come here. Let me give you a big hug." And Wendy felt encouraged. She didn't have to remind John not to talk to her that way. John reminded himself, and he self-corrected before it got worse. He apologized for his demanding words. He apologized for his demeaning tone and his words, and he affirmed her value. He didn't minimize what he did or make excuses for his bad behavior because he wasn't feeling well. And these small changes, seemingly insignificant, but of those stopping those old patterns and created new ones repeated over time, again and again, begin to build new trust and new marital history. And seeing evidence of these changes creates confidence. Then when even the old history starts to rear its old ugly head again, it won't stay long because those old patterns are recognized and stopped so that damage doesn't continue to occur. And now seeds of trust are planted that new history can begin to be built. Creating stability in the aftermath of a destructive marriage is about rebuilding shattered trust. Someone wants to see evidence of, do you hear me? Can you respect me? Can you follow through on your promises? And do you care about how I feel? Will you take responsibility for yourself when you mess up? And can I count on you to control your temper? Can I trust you to tell me the truth? And can I trust you to tell yourself the truth? Will you be accountable? Marriage counseling during this stage can be very effective in helping a couple learn new communication strategies, learning how to resolve conflict in healthy ways, as well as talk through old hurts in constructive ways. But when there is no safety and no sanity, joint counseling is ineffective and often dangerous, because if he can't see his part or take responsibility for his own wrongdoing, if he doesn't understand his own erroneous beliefs, then everything else becomes the wife's fault and her responsibility. And old history keeps repeating itself even in the counselor's office, and the spouse begins to feel hopeless that any change can happen. Next week I want to talk about what to do when there is no change. God bless.